Yo, I just found an absolute gem. Like, this is the funniest thing. So, my favorite skinny fat twink inspiring philosophy decided to debate about the Trinity, which he got annihilated on. Which I just want to say that this guy's been going on this anti-Muslimic rant. He's been like defending the Trinity more than ever, and he just got like absolutely dogpiled by dannyphiltalk of all people. Now, dannyphiltalk is a pretty good debater. I would suggest to check him out. You can watch the full video here, but he was basically just confused for like the first half of it. Like even after Danny explained it 3 different times for him, he still had no clue what was going on in the conversation. But basically, the argument is the LPT, which is just going to be the Holy Spirit equals God, Jesus equals God, the Father equals God, which is going to create a problem if you have the predicate of God in all of them, because you're going to count 3 gods when Trinitarians claim there's 1 God. For example, if you predicate being gay on A, B, and C, you're going to count 3 gay people, right? 3 gay men. Same thing can be said when we're talking about God, for example. If you predicate God in all of them, you're going to count 3 gods. And he did not understand the basic objection, and he had to commit himself to a weird logic in order to escape the entire problem. I just think it's hilarious. Check it out.
Agency and a narrow sense of agency, and they're both identical to X.
They're both identical to me is what my point is, right?
Okay, but if they're both identical to you, you just get a flat-out contradiction in saying that the broad and narrow sense are identical. You get transitivity. There's a transitivity of identity.
Okay, but you agree, though, they can both be identical to me, right?
No, there would be... Look, you know what transitivity is? If you say A is identical to B and C is identical to B, then A is going to be identical to C, right? That's the transitivity of identity.
Okay.
Okay, so if this wide sense and this narrow sense are both identical to you, then the wide and narrow sense are going to be identical to each other, given that transitivity law.
But they're not, though. This is the problem with
which is why you need to revise.
No, this is again. You're assuming this counting method applies in all cases and with all things, and it just simply doesn't.
Well, that doesn't even have to do with accounting. That's nothing to do with accounting method. That's just transitivity. Do you reject the transitivity of identity?
I am not a classical logician, if that's what you mean. I do not agree with that the classical laws of logic are necessary.
Okay,
I take Quine's logic, for example. I hold Quine's logical system.
Okay, so you're saying that if A is identical to B and B is identical to C, then A is not necessarily identical to C.
Not necessarily, right.
Okay, so you use other logics other than classical logic.
Yeah, very few philosophers today use classical logic. That's gone.
I don't know if that's true.
No, it is.
I
look up Alex Malpass, for example.
I know Alex Malpass personally, but the point. I understand there's a lot of talk about different types of logic, pair-consistent logics, and all of that.
Not necessarily.
So just to be clear, do you think that Trinity, if you're using classical logic, coheres with classical logic?
Possibly, yeah. But again, I don't use classical logic.
Okay. Well, now, to be honest, I'm only really prepared for someone that uses the kind of the classical logic that I'm familiar with. Out of curiosity, what kind of logic do you use with respect to the Trinity?
The logical system I've used in the past goes back to someone named Quine. It's been a while since I brought it up. If you give me a minute, I can pull up his stuff here again.
Well, don't worry about it. But look, the whole thing about the LPT, okay, is that there's either a type of classical logic, a common sense logic, whatever is out there, and it doesn't conform to it. If you're saying that you're adopting a different logic, then there's a sense in which you agree with people that are rendering the LPT or forwarding it, because if you do use that kind of logic, there is a problem.
Well, sure, but I mean, I don't think that's going to apply to a lot of things we've discussed. I mean, this is my problem with doing this kind of stuff, is that a lot of people just sort of have these sort of philosophical presuppositions, and then they sort of just run.
Alright, so that was inspiring philosophy getting cooked on it and conceding that classical logic does not account for the Trinity, which is crazy. That's an absolute bizarre concession. That means the vast majority of philosophers cannot hold to the Trinity being true. And I like how pluralism and other forms of logic, like new logic, or quantum logic, or whatever you want to call it, new logic still hold to the transitivity of identity. I don't know what logic he's using. He also said he uses Quine's logic. Quine was a classical logician. I don't know where this guy got this idea from. But dannyphiltalk obliterated him. Check his channel out. This was just funny. I wanted to share it because it's becoming more and more relevant now that inspiring philosophy is doing all these Trinity debates with Muslims and what are they called? Hebrew Israelites. He's doing a lot more Trinity debates, and I just thought, I gotta remind you, he's a clown. He got destroyed. He got owned. He thinks that classical logic can't account for the Trinity. It's over for him.